Hello again. So I'm here with Brian Anderson, and he has got some great stuff to share with us. I've had a very quick preview of these videos that he's made, and you're really going to enjoy them. So let's just give everybody a moment or two to join, because we are a couple of minutes early, which is most unusual for this LiveCode Global. So I'm just going to mention in the Slack channel that we're about ready to start as well. And let's see, we've got 29 now. Yes, people are coming back. I dare say they're still boiling the kettle.
Getting the tea.
Yeah, getting the tea ready. Yeah. Look, now we're up to 38 now. So that's good. That's great. So tell us what you do, Brian.
Actually, it's in the video, but I'm a video guy. I work at the University of Maryland, and it's pretty much all in there. But this is going to be a bit of a case study, and hopefully you'll see some things maybe I hadn't thought about using LiveCode for before. So
excellent. Okay, right. Well, I'm going to hand it right over to you now, and you can kick us off.
Thank you much. Okay, I'm going to play video. It's easier that way. So here we go. So what I'm going to talk about today is really a case study. I'll talk about code a little bit, but not all that much. But I'm going to walk you through some problem solving, some ways that LiveCode made a project possible that otherwise would not have been. So before I get started, first a little bit about me. I'm a musician by training, a sound engineer, and a video guy. So yeah, the green screen, it's what I do. And I've been building XTalk applications since the 1980s, so that means I'm old. And currently I'm the Director of Art and Media Production at the National Foreign Language Center at the University of Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. So this conference has been great. We have learned a lot about things like the cloud, about APIs. We've been talking about mobile. We've been talking about databases, and these have been great. I've learned a lot. I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff because the project that I'm going to be talking to you about didn't involve any of those things. It was specifically built to run on one computer in a lab using a lot of XML, AppleScript, system events, QuickTime, shell commands, things that I had not used before and we haven't talked a lot about. So hopefully you'll learn some things that I learned in the process of doing this. So this project was work I did for the Department of Hearing and Speech Sciences here at the University of Maryland. And it was funded by the National Institutes of Health. Dr. Sandra Gordon-Salant was a primary investigator for this, and we're thankful to the NIH for their assistance in making this possible. So the research questions that they wanted to answer included, what is the impact of auditory visual distraction on communication? So if I were to tell you that I drove down 29 onto the Washington Beltway to get to College Park to my office today, you might have a hard time remembering it because you're busy watching the guy destroy a computer over on the side. And that was part of what they were wanting to research. Another question is, how does speech perception degrade when the speaker has an accent? So I am Canadian. You may or may not have detected that. I try to hide it. I don't try to hide it, but I hide it pretty well. But how do different accents degrade our ability to understand or make it more difficult? And then the last thing they wanted to research was, how does accurate synchronization of audio and video affect perception? I thought, well, we could do a demo of that to see how it works, but chances are when we're streaming, that's going to sort of happen automatically. We've all seen that happen. So if you're going to answer questions like these, there are a number of things that you need. First of all, you need stuff for people to say. Now, Dr. Salant gave me a list of sentences, and the first one on the list was what you see here: the birch canoe slid on the smooth planks. Well, that's kind of odd. And all of them were equally unusual. Some were downright weird. And so I had to do a little research on these. Now, some of you, if you live in the US, may remember a few years ago a commercial for a cell phone company where there was this guy who was saying, "Can you hear me now?" Good. And he'd take a few steps and he'd say, "Can you hear me now?" And he's evidently walking across the country checking the quality of cell phone reception just by walking across the country saying, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" Well, there are people that do things like that. They obviously don't walk around. What they do is drive around the country and drive to different spots, transmitting what a lot of people refer to as the Harvard sentences. They were developed back in, I think, the 1930s. And they've been used for testing all kinds of communications systems. So I came to understand that we would be starting with Harvard sentences. There are 72 lists of 10 sentences. We'd be using all of them. And then there were 40 monosyllabic words. So a total of 880 what they called utterances that they were going to have these people say. The second thing we need is people to talk. And we want to test, as I said, accented versus unaccented speech. So Dr. Salant picked 3 native speakers of English and 3 native speakers of Spanish. So that gave us 6 what we call talkers to do the talking, read the 880 utterances. Then to test asynchronous video and audio and that effect on perception, we needed synced audio. We needed audio that was early in 50 millisecond steps, 9 steps up to 450 milliseconds, and then the other direction, 9 steps, 50 milliseconds off for a total of 19 sync values. And then finally, the other thing they wanted to test with that distraction thing was, what if there were things going on behind the person who was talking? Things like maybe videos of traffic or extreme sports or other things like that. How would that affect perception? And so they thought, well, we'll do 4 backgrounds. So now that we know all the parameters, we need to do a little math. How many videos do we need to make? So let's see, we've got 880 utterances, 6 talkers, 19 sync values, 4 backgrounds. That's over 400,000 videos. We have a problem. First of all, we have a number of problems, actually. The first one is time. We did a little math, and if with the green screen and the compositing and the asynchrony and all of these things, we figured it was going to take roughly 2.5 years for one editor to do all of this work. And it was time that we didn't have and they didn't have. They needed the videos sooner. Second of all, we had an issue of storage, and there's a number of different numbers we came up with, how much storage it was going to require to do this, but it was not insignificant. And so we needed to find a way to improve on the storage situation. And then finally, we realized we needed a delivery system, because the way that they had been creating these videos, I'll get into in a moment, was just not going to be sustainable. So we thought, how are we going to solve all these problems? Well, guess what? LiveCode. We thought of a number of LiveCode solutions that could be useful in solving these 3 problems and making this project a reality. So the reason we proposed we needed a delivery system was that the way they were delivering tests to people up until this point had started with Adobe Premiere for editing videos that they already had of other people speaking the Harvard sentences, using Adobe Audition to maybe edit the audio if it needed to be cleaned up a little bit, using Media Encoder to do the compression and then transcoding to get it ready for delivery, which was done on DVD, so they needed to learn to be DVD authors. And that ended up in a standard definition video being displayed on a high definition TV. So it was the quality wasn't great. So we proposed that we would build for them a brand new delivery system, one that was not using antiquated old manual processes, but would be automatic, and instead of a bicycle would be an absolute rocket. And we were going to build this for them in LiveCode. It would be a LiveCode app that allowed them to design, save, and present the test scenarios. It would include high definition video all the way, so the imagery would be great for the people taking the tests. There would be no limit to the number of backgrounds they could use, because there would be real-time compositing of the talker videos with the backgrounds. And then finally, instead of having to manually offset the audio from the video to test this asynchrony question, there would be a simple click interface that would allow these video and audio offsets to be set. And so, to do this, there were some very specific video requirements. First of all, we needed video with transparency, so we could do the live transparency, the live compositing. There needed to be multiple audio tracks, and I'll get into that in a moment, what that was being used for. And then finally, it had to be not too terribly CPU intensive while playing back video. Different video codecs will have different, put different stresses on the CPU while playing. So that was something we had to consider because of what we were planning. So where we landed was using a QuickTime container and a ProRes codec. And you may not be familiar with ProRes. It's from the Pro video world, but it's a codec that matched all of these requirements, and QuickTime was the container. So now that we had figured all of this out and worked out a bit of a workflow, we got to work. So first of all, we started out by doing some production work in our green screen studio. I'm sitting in it now, although you can't see it because I've gotten rid of the green, but this is what the room looks like. This is not from a shoot for this project, but from something else, to get an idea of the kind of room we were working in. We used a teleprompter. The teleprompter allowed these Harvard sentences to scroll in front of the people talking so they would know what to say. And it also allowed us to very carefully record 10 sentences at a time with about a 3-second gap of silence in between. And this is going to be really important to minimize the amount of hand manual labor that had to be done and to allow us to automate some things with LiveCode. So after shooting all these videos, it was time to get to work on the post-production. And there were some things we just couldn't make automatic, some things that had to be done by hand. That included editing out of mistakes if somebody tripped over a word like I just did, removing of the green screen, obviously, leveling of the audio to make sure that the audio levels were consistent, which was going to be important in hearing tests. And then finally, using Adobe Audition to automatically detect those 3-second gaps that we put between the sentences. And this was going to be really important later to automate editing with LiveCode. And the output of this was one video for every 10 sentences that was transparent and ready to go, a marker file that had these CSV time codes of where these 3-second gaps were, and then finally one audio file for each of these 10 sentences in the video file. So one video file, 10 audio files, and a CSV file with editing information. That's when we were able to move away from doing things by hand and move on to LiveCode. So these markers that we had saved, there was over 10,000 marker values. And these were made by Adobe Audition, but they weren't quite right because of this offset that we needed to create. So what we did is we made a quick little utility app, called it Marker Masseuse, and it would go in and pad these offset times, edit the CSV files to create new values that would allow the offsets to happen and for everything to work. So it was a quick little tool, but it made a big difference and edited all these CSV files. The next step was automated video editing. So to edit all these things by hand was going to be impossible, but we had edit values from these CSV files. We had the video and we had the audio ready to go. So we created an app that would create an XML file in a standard video editing format that would allow these videos to be edited essentially automatically. And it would do things like set where the offsets were and how many they were going to be, what the frame rate of the video was, how the video was scaled, centering it, positioning it to get everything to align. And you'll see at the bottom there an XML template. This is where the first XML work came in. This template was the beginning, sort of a stem of this video editing standard format that would then be fed to another process to continue the editing. So talking about storage settings, let's go back to how many videos. We had over 400,000 videos we had to make. And part of the reason we wanted to use QuickTime was because, again, there's multiple audio track support. So this one line of code, turning audio tracks off and on, became really important. We realized we could leverage that to save a lot of storage space. So what we did, this is an example of a video with multiple audio tracks. And what we decided to do, normally this might be a different language, French, German, English, whatever it might be in a movie, but we decided to use these instead to set sync values. So soundtrack 1 was audio and video synchronized. Soundtrack 2, it was the sound was offset by 50 milliseconds back, and then 100, and then 150, and so on. And by doing this, we took down the video count to 21,000. So you're probably, if you're doing fast math, you're going, well, 21,000, you should have been able to do more with that, just do more audio tracks. Well, we ran into two issues. One was a limitation of QuickTime, or Adobe Premiere Pro, we're not really sure which, I think it's with QuickTime, was the number of audio tracks you could put in a file. And we couldn't have enough because there's a limit of something that I couldn't do anyway in LiveCode, and if someone has a solution, I'm all ears. And that was right here. LiveCode didn't give us the ability to pan audio to one ear or the other. And for these tests, the audio needed to be coming out separate outputs on the computer. So you'll see here, this particular file is sentence 1, talker 1, list 1, sentence 1, with the audio pan to the left. And that had to be done in the video file, hard-coded, and the audio offset early. So for every utterance, we actually ended up with 4 video files. One with it panned to the left, audio early, and panned to left, audio late, and then also to the right, audio early and audio late. And that gave us the right or the required number of tracks to get all of the offsets we needed. But still, a huge savings to go from 400,000 video files down to 21,000 video files. So now we were ready to actually make the final videos. We had 5,280 live code generated XML files in a standard video editing format. Those were fed into Adobe Media Encoder, which read them directly and sort of did the editing on the fly and rendering out those 21,000 videos that we were now down to. And Media Encoder was fed to 4 high-end Apple workstations on our network rendering, which meant I could go home and go to bed. And actually, 4 machines were working on this for about 3 days, off and on. And over the weekend, we let them run, come in on Monday and check and see what had worked or what had broken or fallen apart. But a lot of time in editing and rendering these videos out. So our next issue after that was one of file management, also doing some minor edits on these 21,000 videos. Each one of these videos had an issue. So I showed you before all these tracks. Well, if someone were to play this video file in some other application or maybe in the Finder or just in the desktop, they would hear all of these audio tracks playing simultaneously, which are all offset by different amounts. And so you had this echo thing, and it was going to be unusable for people who couldn't understand why it was acting this way. So we thought, well, the right thing to do is to solve this problem. So what we did is we wrote yet another little file management script that used AppleScript. Now, some would say we could have done this directly with AppleScript, but AppleScript choked on the number of video files. So we wrote AppleScript into a LiveCode app to do the work and could kind of throttle things back, and LiveCode could kind of be the traffic cop to make sure things happened. So this do field statements as AppleScript was the trick we needed. If you haven't done it before, you can check it out. And here was a little app we created. The AppleScript was in there. There were some other things going on. It would edit the video files and would also do file management because these were all in one big directory and they needed to be ordered and into lists and so on. So I again went home and went to bed. And in a day or two, we had a bunch of video files where the mutes had been set. So only the synced audio would play when it was being played outside of our application. And they were all nicely organized into directories in a file structure that made sense for the next part of the project, which was the delivery system. And this is the delivery system we built. We called it Scenario Designer. And I'm going to demo that in a moment. We're going to take a quick break in case you have any questions.
Fun stuff. Oh, and sorry, I'm not hearing you, Heather.
Ah, that would be because my microphone was off.
That'll do it.
Yeah, well, it was lovely. I was really impressed. That's very interesting to see.
It was a fun challenge, yeah. And I've always just built little utility apps like the ones we saw here. I've never built sort of a full-blown app that someone else had to actually use, and that's what we'll be getting into next. Were there any questions?
I think they're all saying how exciting it was and how interesting.
I was exhausted, but anyway. All right, well, we'll move on and play the next part because it is a little longer, but you'll be into LiveCode, building a UI. It was kind of utilitarian, so it's not like on the level of the stuff that Scott Rossi does, but you know, it's usable and learn a lot by doing it. So we'll let it go. I've got the right one here. Yeah. All right.
Okay, I'm going to walk you through the app that we built to play back the videos that LiveCode helped us create and show you some things that I wasn't honestly sure that LiveCode could do, but amazingly it does. So let's go ahead and launch the application Scenario Designer. Now, what you see here in the beginning with an untitled scenario is sort of the global controls for a scenario. But let's go straight to building a scenario. What we need is that stuff for people to say. So the first thing we do is choose our talker. There's 6 of them available here. We're going to work with David today. I'm going to add Harvard sentence, list 1, sentence 1 to the list. I could have previewed it by just doing
The
this.
Bridge nose laid on the smooth planks.
We added in a way with all of these words and sentences for people to search for stuff. Added a word search feature. You'll see here. And typical autocomplete. And here are the options that have the word blue in it. That would pull from the Harvard sentences or the monosyllabic words. But double-clicking that loads it into the preview, and I can add it to the list. Something that I didn't know was possible and found somewhere in a forum, thank you, whoever you are, is an undocumented feature to drag and drop to reorder items in a data grid. Let's go back here to our global settings. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to turn this down to a smaller number, the delays in between. So remember we said that they had to play a utterance and then give some kind of instruction to the person who was being tested. So let's go ahead and set those up. I'm going to turn on a pre and a post utterance setting. And we basically built a word processor in here. These are all basic LiveCode things. Let's say for the pre-scenario, we'll say get ready. For post-scenario, we'll say all done. And the instructions are going to be, please repeat the sentence. When I say we built a word processor in here, we really did. You can select different fonts, italic, bold. There's a color option. All the normal things that a user would expect to do can be done right here. Pretty cool. And those are all saved when a scenario is saved. I'll show you in a moment. Now, here's our scenario. Notice David's head is getting cut off. That's a little bit by design. The videos are bigger than the default screen that they'll be doing. And we've done that so that you can move them around, depending on what we've got in the background, and so on. Now, speaking of backgrounds, you'll see up here there's 3 different options for backgrounds. The first one is solid color. You see there's a blue color now. You see it says it's current. These are recently selected or recently used background colors, and so changing them is as simple as clicking on the swatch and the background color is changed. If you want something completely different, we'll go for a yellow. It's simple as that, and you'll see that the recent colors are updated to those 9 possible values. Still images can be used as backgrounds. Let's go here to our background images, and this makes some sense. This is from LiveCode San Diego. We took this lovely little cruise, and so we'll put David in San Diego. So let's see what it's like to actually administer this test. We can go to administer test. Now I want to display this on the external display. So I'm going to click here and notice I get an error. Now this was really important to keep the screen size as small as possible but still high definition. We set by default to 720p, and we forced them to set their monitor to that. Now the monitor I'm using for the TV is not set to that, and LiveCode senses that, and this is something I didn't know you could do. You can launch system preferences. So here we are in system preferences. Here's the size setting for my display. I can set it to 720p. Go back to Scenario Designer, try again, and it happily puts it on the screen with our pre-scenario prompt ready to go. So you're the listener, you're in the room, you got your headphones on in this soundproof room. I'm the person giving the test, and here we go. Let's see what happens.
The bridge nose laid on the smooth planks.
There are the instructions.
Glue the sheet to the dark blue background.
Now, that would have taken, to build that in something like Adobe Premiere, I do video for a living, and it would have taken me hours with the titles and the compositing, rendering it out, all of that. LiveCode is doing this all on the fly, which is just absolutely awesome. And this is a file that I can save and reuse. So let's do that right now. I'm going to save it. I'm going to put it on the desktop because that's where everybody saves everything. And there's my file right there. The last background that we didn't talk about is background video. So let's select a background video. Remember I said before that we needed a very specific kind of video for the app to be able to direct audio to the right output. And LiveCode checks to make sure if the video is in the proper format. I'll show you how in a minute. And offers to convert it if it's not. And we've built all that in. And this is an example of integrating command line tools. And this is going to be using FFmpeg under the hood. And I'm going to go and run it, and I'll show you the code that did that. So I'm going to say, would you like to convert it? It knows it's been done once before because of where it's been saved, but I'm going to go ahead and replace it and watch what happens. Notice we get a little bit of a user feedback here. There's thumbnails of the video being converted. This is all FFmpeg, all command line stuff. And an alert that that's been converted. So now if we go back to our scenario, there's David. You can go to administer the test, and I'm going to just delete one of these since we don't need to hear all of them now that we've seen that. Use the external display and run it. So there we have video with transparency or an alpha channel being composited live on top of another video shot on an iPhone, converted using FFmpeg and LiveCode. That's pretty cool. Let's step it up. You can have two talkers the way we designed this. We're going to use David again simply because he's given me permission to put his face all over the internet. And we're going to add a second sentence. There we are. Talker 2. And we're going to scale him down too just to make it easier to see. Let's go ahead and play that because this to me is something I wasn't sure LiveCode could pull off. So there you have it. 2 high-end videos with transparency compositing live on top of another video all at the same time. So 3 players in LiveCode. And the last little piece of the puzzle I'll show you, just because we can, is I'm going to turn the volume down here. Notice we have mixing controls for everybody. We're going to add a sound effect. And this particular sound is something that they use in testing a lot. Notice it needs to be converted as well. And we get a quick little conversion. And the file is ready to use. Let's go over here. We can listen to it. Not fun to listen to, but there it is. And so now, let's see, we're going to put 1 to the left, 2 to the right, all the noise to the right. We're going to turn down the helicopters so we can hear that babble. And one more time. Let's see what happens. So that is really amazing. 4 players going simultaneously, live compositing, all going on with LiveCode, overlaying text, timing it all out. The one piece we didn't talk about is varying the sync. So you'll recall that we had multiple audio tracks that could be used to set the offsets that they needed to test asynchrony. So I'm going to turn off Talker 1, the sound effect. We're going to turn all this stuff off and just make it simple. Put San Diego in the background again. And I'm going to go, let's say, minus 450 milliseconds. And you'll notice when we play it now,
the bridge nose laid on the smooth planks.
And I'll just do the 450 because it's easiest to hear, but you have these incremental steps of 50 millisecond offsets to use in the study. And a feature they asked us to add, actually this is recently, this is why we're at version 1.5 now, is the ability to vary this asynchrony on a utterance by utterance basis. So if I turn this on, notice these controls go away and they're now available here. I'm going to add one more item. So we can have 2 different values when we go to playback and more down the list. Um, I'm shocked at how easy this was to create. We all know that, but if you're new to LiveCode, building something that's rich like this is not that hard. I'm not that smart a guy. Here we'll look at the default settings screen briefly, just a couple of other features. So they can set the gap default, the panning default, the color defaults for the prompts. They can reset paths to the libraries. This is really important because we designed this in such a way that someone could take this little app, be sitting at a Starbucks, not having access to the full media files, be able to build a scenario because the sentences are all stored in XML, so they know what sentences are available to them. Save that, come and bring it back to the testing lab and reconnect the audio and video if it was needed. And in fact, I'll show you real quick. You're going, well, what about all those background videos? How do you keep them from, being stuck on a user's computer? I'll have to save this real quick. And if I go out here on the Mac, document files connected to an application are really just a folder. And if we show package contents, you'll see inside there is the image file that it needs. So when they move this file, that image file is going along, as well as that audio file. And all in their converted state. So that way, when they move them, there's not another conversion that has to happen again. They can walk into a room, sit down, and start doing a test. And then the last little feature, which is really important, is this all goes into audio equipment, and they have test tones that they had us build to calibrate the two different speakers. So a pretty rich app. I promised to show some of the code involved with these different things, so I'll just pop into those real quick. So media conversion. Using FFmpeg, a couple things. So this is building the command line command based on what's going on. And this little bit here, metadata prepared for AGSP, writes metadata to the file. So LiveCode can look at that when it goes to open a video, but it's one that's already converted. It's not going to do it again, and that's how it tells that. First of all, the audio files are copied in the previous line, and then they're panned. Second piece I want to talk about is opening files from the Finder. I didn't show you that. Let me pop back to that again. So if we quit Scenario Designer, the user expects to be able to double-click their file and open the application. I'd never done this before. Notice we're open back to where we were before. The way that is handled is with this on Apple event command, and then a handler that I've written in there to do different things depending on what was going on. And then the final piece is accessing system prefs. I didn't realize that system prefs were just basically a file that you can just launch like a document, and that's how we were able to change the monitor resolution. So all in all, a pretty rich app created pretty easily, pretty quickly. I hope you've learned some things. I learned a lot. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that it'll expand what you're able to do with LiveCode. It sure did for me.
There. Oh, muted. I think.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. How long did it take you to write that?
Off and on. It wasn't full time. There's other work to be done. Spent 6 to 8 weeks on it, probably. Video work. It's been a year-long project from shooting the video on, but that's in the midst of other projects. So this was really sort of a side thing for our organization. We do work for the federal government otherwise. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I think our marketing guy is going to be in touch with you shortly.
Uh-oh. All right. I did something wrong. Cool. And we're working on version 2. We're doing some enhancements right now. When they score these things, they actually write down a piece of paper what the person got right or wrong. We're going to make a click interface with the words on the screen. They can click and output something that then gets to a spreadsheet or to the cloud or something, so they can automatically score these things. Collect metadata about the individual speakers and sentences. So it's going to be expanding, and ran into a couple bugs. Panos has been great, and so a couple fixes we need, but I'm sure I'm going to get them to make version 2 work right. So, but yeah, amazing stuff. LiveCode, that is. Yeah.
I think you have a question.
Is the application available for purchase? I don't know the answer to that. Like I said in the beginning, if you missed it, this was funded by the National Institute of Health for research at the University of Maryland. I don't know. I've talked to Dr. Salant about the possibility of the videos themselves are actually really worth something for researchers to use in other ways. So they in themselves maybe sellable. The app maybe. I'll talk to her and find out and contact me and I'll get back to you if I have an answer on that. Oh, how about the code? Yeah, there was a lot of it. Specifically, what more? Oh, are the test taker utterances recorded? No. So they sit in the room, they've got headphones on, and the person delivering the test just makes notes on what they're doing. And they've already written papers based on version 1. Actually, I don't know that they used the app, they used the videos themselves that they were still editing by hand while we were building the app. So. That might be it.
Yeah, I think so. I think we will need to end there in a couple of minutes.
We're a little over.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. It was well worth it. Wonderful. So thank you so much for your time there, Brian. And
happy to share. Thanks for the opportunity.
If you want to pop over to the Slack channel, I don't know if there might be a few more questions there that people can ask.
I'll be there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So thank you, folks. I have to end this so that I can start Ali and come back with widgets. So head over to the Slack channel and continue asking Brian what you want to know. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.